Let's take a moment to recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. In compliance with notification requirements of Ohio's open meeting law, notice of this meeting has been publicly posted and major public media has been notified. NOACA conducts its meetings according to Robert's Rules of Order. Actions during the meeting will be taken by voice vote. If any member feels the need to abstain from any vote due to a conflict of interest, he or she should state their intention to abstain when the matter is introduced by the chair for presentation for the record. Subsequently, that member shall not participate in any discussion of the matter for which a conflict exists. According to Robert's rules, absence from a meeting does not require a member to abstain from voting on the minutes. If the member still wishes to abstain, he or she should state their intention for the record. For the benefit of our guests, from the public in the recording of this meeting, please be sure to speak into the microphone. The microphones can be turned on and off using the gray button on top of them. They are on when the light is blue. And my understanding is no one has signed in to speak today. Since that's the case, we're going to move on to chairs and executive directors report. For my report, before I turn it over to the executive director, I would ask that County Commissioner Chris Ronayne start off the meeting.
Thank you, Mayor, and good afternoon, everybody. I want to say thank you, Mayor Castelli, for taking on the chairmanship of this subcommittee to the executive committee. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Kyle Dreyfus Wells has assumed the potential vice chair. If we have, so glad for the two of you to be doing that, but also to every member who's here today. Thanks for signing on to this. And also want to thank Grace and Liz, who've met with our team just a couple of times to get ready for this. When I say our team, I'm just coming to my office, but I appreciate you helping us get here, Grace. And Ryan, thanks. We've talked to you and your colleague and Matt, and just good to have everybody around the table. So I wanted to say, in addition to those thanks, we're really looking forward to the committee's work. I think the discussion items on the agenda today kind of speak for themselves, so I won't get too much into the weeds on it. But I was hoping, as a new chair that came in January, to bring forth this HR Personnel and Organizational Development Subcommittee, which was motivated. I thought we had a great January meeting, and I appreciate Jeff's chairmanship through to January. But the presentation that Grace and her team brought from OE Strategies, kind of talking about organizational health and development, was really where I was hoping this committee would pick up on some of the organizational development opportunities within the organization as an agenda item. Another thing we have talked throughout the course of last year about is kind of just mapping the HR function within NOACA to assist the CEO and her team on the right report channels for HR and how that can work most effectively in the organization. She'll have, I think, as we discussed earlier, Grace and I, some matters for you to consider as counsel to her and to I on exactly how we could staff HR, whether it's continued consultancy, whether it's a direct in-house person, as the HR generalist is on the agenda today to be discussed, or whether it's a hybrid of the two. I wanted to lean back one more time to the chair and say it's particularly special to have Chair Castelli on, Mayor Castelli, and his job preceding to the Middleburg Heights mayor's job he's got. He's worked in the HR world for years. He has an HR professional background. So you were chosen carefully on that basis, and that was first directed to me by Kyle Dreyfus Wells. So you got out of it, you got into it because of your background, but you're sticking with it. To all the county representatives, thanks, you guys. I mean, I think some of you have been with us. I'm looking across the table here. You've been with us through last year, where I think we were just hashing out HR matters and how to best level set for success with Grace and with her team. So again, that organizational development, that HR function. And then in fairness to our CEO, I thought between the executive committee and her, we needed a group to kind of help develop performance goals and measures. We have a framework that's in front of you. Grace on her end has already given feedback to that and given some direction of how she hopes to be measured in her work and performance. And as a CEO at the county, but as a former CEO in other agencies, I know clarity is always a good thing. It's not always common currency, but clarity is a good thing. Like, what am I actually being measured on and how those measures work? So back to you guys. I think some of the work we would like with the executive committee, busy as it is you're all busy people, just working through this committee to get to the executive committee, strong HR framework, performance measures and standards. And as I've always said in HR matters, at least as I've known them, is you want it to be a conversation that's 360, that's not just a top down, here are your goals and we hope you'll meet them. It's more bottom up and all around of how the goals meet the organizational objectives. So those three things I hoped would be matters that this committee could take up as a subcommittee of the executive committee. Seeing through the strategies that OE as the organizational development consultant has brought forth. It's one thing to get a plan and then it's another to put it on a shelf and never do something about it. Or it's something to actually do something about. So I think reviewing that OE work would be great. In the very immediate, going back to the third item, I think working on HR performance measures and the framework with Grace, perhaps it's a smaller subcommittee of you guys, but would be very helpful and a very timely thing to do. And then third is working through with Grace, which again, you're going to get presentation today about what is the best HR methodology for this organization of this size. Is it in-house? Is it continued consultancy or hybrid thereof? And I have my takes on it, but I'm going to listen to what your takes are. My goal as chair, and thanks for the opportunity to address you today, is to kind of build up through the organization a longer-term organizational development and a healthy organization at NOACA. And I think we've got a great foundation to stand on to build on that. So I appreciate the CEO's work to put in her own goals and objectives already out there for your review. Appreciate her work with her team to bring an organizational development specialist in OE to the table. And I appreciate her work to develop an HR generalist position, which she's going to review with you today. Those three things, if we got kind of good traction on that in calendar year 25, I think we'd be having a healthy head start for the year here. Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'll leave it back to you.
Thank you, County Executive. I don't have anything further, but I would like to turn it over to our Executive Director, Grace Galucci.
Thank you very much. I also want to acknowledge and thank President Ronayne and Chairman Costelli. We've had some extensive conversations about the importance of HR and HR personnel and organizational development subcommittee. I know that the success of this organization is important to all of us, and it can only be done through the talent aspects of the organization. And so I look forward to working with you all. I want to thank you for your time and energy. I know that you're all very, very busy people with your main jobs. And so to know that you care as much as you do about this organization, to offer me some advice, guidance, and a path forward is very much appreciated.
Thank you, Grace. Next, there are no action items for today's meeting, but I want to move on to discussion items. Grace?
Yeah, so the first item on the discussion item list is the charter development. So we have charters for every committee, subcommittee, and council at NOACA, and it is in your packet. Right behind the agenda. And so that charter is what staff, particularly Liz Barlick, worked with me on. This is sort of a draft, and we want to go through the subcommittee charter to ensure that the organization is established the way you want it to be established. And I believe at this point in time, it is considered a special subcommittee based on our rules and regulations. But we would perhaps like to establish it as a permanent subcommittee. And either way, I think the charter is valuable. So if we want to go through the charter, the purpose, I believe, was given to us by Cuyahoga County. Thank you, Annie, for your work on that. The goals would need to be developed by this subcommittee, the functions by the subcommittee. I mean, we could take what was said by the county executive and president of NOACA to put some of that together. The membership is defined as consisting of 6 members of the board of directors with additional members appointed based on the knowledge and expertise necessary to accomplish the subcommittee's purpose. And I'm sorry, I should have read the purpose, which is the HR Personnel and Organizational Development Subcommittee provides guidance to the Executive Committee on all matters related to the agency's human resources, personnel, performance management, staffing, organizational structure, and development. At this point, in terms of meetings, we eventually would probably get to a quarterly schedule like we do with the other meetings, but at this time, I imagine you would want to have more frequent meetings than quarterly meetings, so we need to come up with a potential schedule. We can continue to do it as a special subcommittee until we decide that we want it permanently. Then we do need to take it to the board for approval, and that they would approve the meeting schedule. And then agendas and minutes, Brenda Walker will be joining us to develop the minutes to this subcommittee, and staffing would be myself and Liz Barlick. We want to spend some time today on the goals and the functions, or maybe just get some reaction to this?
Yeah, I mean, I think what county executive laid out is really the primary goals that we should just, from my standpoint, I would put those in as our goals right now. And if there's any other additional items that any of the members feel should be part of that, we could discuss that now. If not, then we'll start with those 3 goals.
I just want to understand, I agree with you. I think that that's obviously the place to start, but I just want to make sure that we all understand. So I heard 3 things and I tried to put those into goal language, like action language, and I'll just throw this out. So first of all, you want us to look at that report from OE, right? So that's somehow review and select organizational development recommendations from the OE report. That seems to be the first goal. Establish an HR function within NOACA, right? That's the second one. And then I hear you want to formalize the performance management process within the organization, because it's not just the CEO's performance management. Obviously, it's performance management across the whole organization. So, and performance management process is within the HR function. But I mean, those are the 3 things I heard. That's what to your point, Mayor, those are the goals.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah, and just, Chair, if I may just react to that. Absolutely. And again, it's good to have had some conversation with Grace advance of this meeting. So Grace, unless you disagree, I think you're on to exactly capturing those. The OE review doesn't have to be in a finite period of time. That's only as it relates to this. I mean, it's ongoing organizational development review and ongoing review of organizational development. And I think it's a good, healthy head start as we've got OE's work product right in front of us this year. But I think if this does go to where Grace suggested, which is a permanent subcommittee, which I think would be terrific, just to give she and her leadership team, a group to react to at the board on HR matters. I mean, that's where I would hope it would go. So to keep the OE review kind of fluid to all organizational development over time, not just encapsulated in this singular time frame of reviewing OE's work. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so so really look at OD strategies as a broader than just the OE strategies work.
Yeah, exactly. Like I don't think we have to name them in the goals. It's as much as ongoing interface with our organizational development function. But I think you hit it.
And maybe the first, or our next meeting, the first item should be to kind of dig into those recommendations and start to formalize action plans around those.
Yeah. And in your role, Mayor, outside of your professional background in HR, I mean, I think what Kyle said about it's not just a singular performance review of the CEO, but as much as overall performance management and review again.
For the entire
with her at the lead.
organization.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Any other questions on this first item, discussion item?
And would it be fair to say that the functions of the committee is to advise?
And Mayor, just wanted to say, I mean, with our county reps from around the region here, as you guys have, everybody has HR functions within your house. If you see a best practice that we ought to be paying attention to, obviously, I think that's why we're all here. So.
If I could, Mayor, I think a lot of what we're going to deal with and what we've seen through the last year are going to fall into one of those three goals as we move. So those are a great place to start. And it's going to be fluid, like you said. So as we move forward, things are going to happen that you can't anticipate at this point. So I think it's a great beginning.
Anything else on that discussion item? Thanks. So let's, and then we'll work on putting together, for the next meeting,
Specific.
the specific language so we can start to discuss those items and as we said in a little bit more detail.
Okay. Then the next item is a meeting schedule. How frequent does the subcommittee want to meet? And should it be a regular schedule? Do we want to send out a doodle poll to kind of get at your schedules to see what the best date is? Do we want to, I think we came up with a structure when we were looking at it where we could fill it in on one of the Fridays where we don't have anything. And that way keep it consistent with our Friday schedule for NOACA.
Anyone have thoughts on that? I mean, from my perspective, I do have some reoccurring meetings on Fridays that are not when the NOACA meetings are. So for me, it would need to be a little bit later in the day. Also, Tuesday around this time is not bad.
Okay.
It seemed to be a pretty good time, at least. Again, from my perspective, any thoughts from members?
I know that for us, Thursday's our meeting day, so that's usually a real busy day, and Fridays are, but Tuesdays seem to work.
So keep it at Tuesday, 2:30?
That works for me.
Okay.
And as far as frequency goes, I mean, Chair, you guys are getting the rhythm. We had spoken with Grace and Liz about a quarterly, but with the acknowledgement that, Grace, I don't know if we talked about this last part, but you might have a little bit more work in the beginning, just in fairness to Grace on just the immediate matter of performance reviews, because she's in a cycle now where we should, as a executive committee, be reviewing, but we're looking for feedback, which is why I asked to put this committee together, the subcommittee. So thoughts as we roll out, you get more to a quarterly schedule, but in the immediate, maybe it's a little bit more frequent than a quarterly.
So I was thinking initially every other week until we're ready to go monthly, and then we go quarterly. If that works.
Bless you.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll start out bi-weekly, every other week, Tuesdays at 2:30. Then at some point move to monthly and at some point move to quarterly.
Overview of HR at NOACA.
So overview of HR at NOACA. We currently have a process for HR that is somewhat standard. It's a little bit different than what I inherited in that I added some levels of HR, but we currently have a Division of Administrative Services that serves as the HR function. That is Lindy Burt, who is here with us today. So Lindy is the director. Lindy will intake all HR issues. If employees feel comfortable going to her, then she triages them and determines what path they ought to go to, whether it is something that she can handle, whether it is something that should go to our HR consultants. And if our employees do not feel comfortable going to Lindy, then they are able to go to the HR consultant directly for matters. The kinds of things that the HR consultants deal with, and we've had two consultants, one being primarily recruitment focused and one being employee focused in terms of discipline and FMLA and those kinds of things. Particularly the latter, we don't have that expertise in-house, so that is why we have hired a consultant to do that. When I came here, the Director of Finance and Operations also was the head of HR, but there was not a consultant. Everything was done by that person, although the person was an accountant by trade, so did not have an HR background. So we thought that we actually enhanced the HR function by adding the consultants who do have the expertise to deal with those issues. In terms of recruitment, again, we have a person that really helped us over the last couple of years with recruitment. They have essentially kind of shared that with Lindy in terms of the knowledge base, and Lindy is perfectly capable of doing the HR work around recruitment. However, it is very time consuming, and that is not her only function. So it is an area that we feel we can improve on, which is why we have considered perhaps a position to deal with multiple aspects of HR. The HR function.
Grace, I have a question. I'm sorry. So the two consultants on the outside, and I apologize, so one was talent acquisition and then the other handled like employee relations.
Correct.
Okay. And they would do the follow-up with any concerns that were reported from. They would handle the follow-up or who?
No, they would handle the follow-up, and in fact, again, employees can go directly to
them?
that consultant that handles employee relations. And in fact, that consultant has had office hours here at NOACA, which she had very few intakes during office hours, if any, so she doesn't have them regularly anymore, but is available by phone and by email. The performance management process is handled a combination of Lindy and the consultants. So the consultants have worked with us to help the employees develop their performance plans, their performance reviews with the supervisors. And then they also do the sort of administering of that process every year for performance reviews to ensure that there's consistency and that the organization is headed in the right direction in how we are completing them and how we are using them. That's really about it for our HR function. So we have the recruitment, we have the employee relations, and we have the performance management.
I have a couple other questions, just so I understand.
No,
a little
that's
bit better.
great.
So the consultants, are their backgrounds, are they employment law attorneys? Are they HR generalists? What are their backgrounds?
So one is an HR generalist. One is an attorney, HR attorney, HR specialist. I will say that both of the people that we have employed as consultants, how they came to be at NOACA was that when I first came here and we did not have a robust HR department, Cuyahoga County offered HR services for a fee. And so we purchased those HR services from Cuyahoga County, and they provided us two people. Those are the same two people that are current consultants. One of the consultants, by the way, I should say, their contract has been completed, so we either have to renew with that consultant or hold off pending the HR generalist position.
And then currently, no one is on site. There, in the past, there were individuals on site for a period of time, but right now it's more through
Lindy.
Lindy. Okay. Any other questions?
So I think in Lake County, our system is set up very similar. We have an HR person, staff, there's like 2 people, and they handle the day-to-day commonly, but when it gets more difficult or sophisticated, then we reach out to a consultant that we use pretty commonly. And it seems to work that way, especially when it comes to legal matters. And when we get into those things, so the consultant will take over at that point. They don't really have like our employees, which like 1,200 of them, I don't don't really have access to that consultant per se. They'll go through our HR, who will then contact on their behalf. But it's similar, and it seems to work that way because there's just some expertise that you can't hire in-house all the time.
And Lindy's position is what?
The title of it is Director of Administrative Services. And Lindy is here if she would like to speak to any of the things that we're talking about. Please go ahead and take the podium.
And while Lindy's coming up, how many total employees are there at NOACA?
We are budgeted for 47, including myself.
And how many do you have, Grace?
We have 40.
And then Lindy, how are you?
Hi.
How many employees do you have yourself?
So in the Division of Administrative Services, there are 4 individuals, but none of them, I'm the only one devoted to the HR function. So IT, we have 2 staff for IT. We have Kelly, our receptionist at the front desk, who you've all met. And then we have a part-time person, Dave Parsh, who he's a building services specialist.
Lindy, what would you say is the amount of time that, you're spending on, let's say, HR generalist type functions?
Myself, did you say?
Yeah, yourself. Thank you.
It ebbs and flows. Right now, it's quite a bit because we have a number of positions posted. So I'd say there's a lot of recruitment happening right now. I would say any week, anywhere from probably 5 to 10 hours right now.
Here, I have more questions. I'm sorry. So I'll just say this from the context. So we have a large HR department at the sewer district. We have 750 employees, obviously not as large as the county, and 3 unions. So multiple employee issues to deal with. But so I've heard these, and Lindy, if you can help me with this. So recruitment, and obviously the other side of recruitment is retention. So recruitment, it sounds like you're handling that, talent acquisition, which is in and of itself a full-time job. And then you're also handling performance management.
Yeah, I coordinate the process with our directors and the rest of the staff. We roll that out every year in July after the end of the fiscal year. And then we typically rely on one of the consultants to help us to go through and review all the performance evaluations. So.
Okay, so one thing that may be helpful for one of our meetings is to actually have a presentation on performance management, so we could potentially see the process, maybe come up with like a mock employee or something and show us what their year looks like from a performance management standpoint. And then what about succession planning and that kind of thing? Where does that happen?
That is probably not, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No,
Grace.
go ahead.
I was going to say, in terms of, can you be a little more specific in terms of succession planning activities?
Well, the whole thing around employee development. So, helping folks,
Yes.
where's your next, where you headed, what are you doing? Training, that
So
kind of
we
thing?
do have standing line item in our budget. There are dollars allocated for every staff member in the agency for professional development. And then it's available to employees as well on an as-needed basis. If issues come up for employees where they need skill enhancement. We do agency-wide trainings around compliance, obviously, as well. And then we also have money in the budget to assist staff with trade association dues, professional memberships, and then certifications as well. And we also have in our HR policy manual a section that for tuition reimbursement.
And my last question is on compliance, like who does the I-9s and all that kind of stuff?
Our payroll division actually coordinates the benefits enrollment process.
And that's not under you?
No, benefits is not, I do not currently do benefits.
I gotcha. Okay.
So that would be family, any leaves, personal leaves, things like that would all go under the whoever's handling benefits.
No, the personnel leaves such as FMLA is under Lindy. What is under the payroll, which is the Division of Finance, is the benefits such as medical and just keeping track of the vacation, sick time, et cetera, in the payroll system. So they're essentially responsible for ADP, which is our HRIS system.
And is that maintained by ADP or do you have someone on site that does that?
It's maintained by ADP, but Deb Wardell, who is our Director of Finance, works in conjunction with them.
Yeah, and when you were talking about the process of going through the recruitment process or talent acquisition process, I mean, maybe really, I was thinking about this as well, so I'm gonna hitchhike on what you're saying. You know, maybe sort of the employee life cycle, we should go through the whole thing so we understand, you know, who's doing what at what period of time in that employee life cycle process. And then we can have, I think, a cleaner picture of where everything is happening. And then maybe also see if there are some holes where we would, you know, maybe see, you know, certain things for performance management or whatever that may be. That's my thought. Any other questions?
Sorry.
Chair, I like where you guys are going with this, because just taking a hypothetical of somebody coming from seeing a job posting all the way through to response and how they move through. I did want to say to the staff, kudos on how much you absorb in all of this. There's a lot there. It seems like in terms of person power to deal with complexities of HR generally. My question was really about performance management as it relates to all employees. I mean, we as a board have a performance management review relationship with the CEO, but Grace, could you comment a little, and no wrong answer, just curious, is there performance review on each employee? And if so, how does that work? Like who's overseeing those processes?
So there is a performance review for every employee that's done annually, as well as the performance plan is developed annually. We use an instrument actually that was adapted from the RTA, GCRTA. So that instrument that was developed for that agency is what we use. We've changed some of the language to be accommodating to our type of work, but it is essentially the same thing.
Got it.
And that is filled out once a year as a performance plan. Then the employees continue to work towards that. They have reviews annually, but they should be having discussions with their supervisor on a regular basis, whether that be quarterly, every 6 months, or even daily in some cases. So it's a pretty standard process. I can't think of anything that stands out about it, but it does cover objectives, and it asks for 4 objectives and then metrics with those objectives. And in fact, it's the instrument that I sent out last week. And then it has the competencies.
Thanks.
Mayor, if I could, I see that employee retention is probably one of your biggest, because you have highly skilled jobs here that have, credentials that have to be maintained and those kind of things. And for some reason, I get the emails for every engineering firm that's hiring. So this could be a spot that people come and get a couple of years under their belt and move on. How do we break that cycle, and keep the talent here? Because we've had some very good talented people. And it's, a lot of times they stay in Northeast Ohio, which is great to see too, but that's, I'd love to see that in-house, because you're going to be the best, person to decide, like, is this person to have that talent, have what it takes, so.
Thank you for those comments. That's exactly right. I think we've had a little bit of difficulty since the COVID retaining some of our good employees. We've done a pretty decent job, I think, of keeping the majority of our staff intact, but we have lost some talent, and I would like to better understand how to ensure that we can keep that talent. I think one of the major issues was salary, and thanks to the board, we were able to address some salary inequities through a compensation study and the awarding of some additional dollars to employees. So I think that was a really good first step. I think another issue was some of the organizational development concerns that we've talked about over the last year. And we've addressed that by hiring an OD specialist to come in and work with staff and survey staff and develop recommendations. So that's how we've been trying to deal with the retention.
Any other questions on HR at NOACA, the overview? Lindy, thank you. Anything else? Go ahead, Chris.
Chair, just as we go into the conversation about HR generalists, are the contracts for the HR consultants, are they still active, or are they?
So
not active?
one is active and one is inactive. The one that is inactive just became inactive over the last month or so. And that was our sort of, that was our legal HR person. And she has recommended an HR generalist in order to be able to deal with the many things. And so that contract is on pause pending where we want to go with that
Got it.
position.
Okay. Good segue.
Thank you.
So then the next is the HR generalist position. We did include a draft job description in the packet. And although we are a small organization and we considered a part-time person because of the challenges in today's market and the issues that we have had here over the last year, we determined that a full-time position would be a better fit for the organization, ensuring availability to the employees.
Bruce, what's the salary that you were thinking about for this generalist? I don't see it unless I'm missing it.
No, you are not missing it. And actually, I'm going to call Lindy back up. And we have not developed the level of position yet. Initially, it was being considered, she asked for the salary of the position or the salary range of the position.
Oh, around 75 average.
We have this as a non-exempt position, not an exempt
Admin
position.
too.
That curious what the reason for that charge.
Would you say?
Non-exempt versus exempt, just
Oh, I'm
curious for the reason for
pretty
non-exempt.
sure. Oh, non-exempt. Well, based on the job duties, I don't know that this would qualify as an exempt position.
I mean, just looking at that, and I haven't gone through all the details, I mean, of the position, maybe that's,
Non-exempt.
really understanding kind of having a true competent employee relations, professional. I'm assuming you're going to need somebody that has had that experience, does that, can make their own decisions on how to navigate challenges through the organization. One thing I wouldn't want to do this to you guys is bring in somebody that you're going to have to manage and train, and we're defeating the purpose of kind of why you're bringing in that professional. So, again, I haven't looked through the details, but would just caution us on making sure that we bring in the right, doesn't have to be too high level, but it's got to be enough where they can really be a true business partner for the directors and others. My thought.
No, that's great. I think the initial recommendation for some of the job responsibilities and the level of position came from the consultant. But I do think that we need to give it some more thought.
I have a question. So if I heard that right, the inactive consultant right now is the attorney,
Correct.
and then this HR generalist would replace that consultant?
Replace both of them.
Replace both of them. So what would we do then in terms of legal? Would we have to consult with another legal or attorney?
So, yeah, well, we do have an outside counsel who is Ryan Gambala with Dooley and Gambala, and they do have HR expertise. And so when we would need an attorney, that would be the route that we would go, which really was the same way that we were doing it. Although one of the consultants happened to be a lawyer, they were not acting in the capacity of legal counsel on HR issues. We still went to our outside counsel.
So the idea would be that they would take over really where the one attorney consultant is right now. So you would handle all the employment law issues that would kind of get brought up that were a little more challenging.
That's right. A lot of what we do is on the procedural side as opposed to what an in-house HR person is dealing with kind of day to day. And so when it comes to HR function, the intersection of HR and legal, we make sure that the I's are being dotted, the T's are being crossed, that things are being done the right way, that we're compliant with state law, we're compliant with our own regulations, those kinds of things. Do we provide advice and counsel? Yes, as well. But maybe less involved in the minutia of the HR operation.
Just to kind of understand that, Ryan, would you get involved in like workman's comp issues, theft issues, and just as a consultant on those?
Those are things that we do handle for public and private sector clients. Some of that would depend on the request we got from the organization, and whether that was something that made sense. Typically, those are things that would at least come across our desk for a consultation and a decision about whether that can be managed in-house or it makes sense to bring outside counsel in.
Thank you.
So your firm has, and I apologize just because I'm not up to speed. Your firm has employment law attorneys.
Oh, yes, sir. Yeah. I mean, Matt and I, large focus of our practice is employment law issues specifically related to public sector clients.
And Chair, if I may, that was somewhat serendipitous because I remember being a part with you guys of that were here last year, the conversations about selection of the firm. But when you asked about employment law counsel, we went back to Dooley Gambala and found out that in fact they do. So rather be lucky than good, maybe. But it's that was a plus, and I do think that's really material to this conversation because it's a big deal to potentially go another direction with a consultant that you've had. But between Ms. Burt, yourself, our attorney, and then the HR generalist, it sounds like would be working in your wing with Grace. Sounds like you've got a nice, you got some bench there,
Any other questions on the HR generalist position? Grace, anything else on?
No, I think perhaps what could be helpful for us too is if you have any job descriptions of your own in your organizations for an HR generalist type of a person, that could be very helpful for us. Forward that my way.
And I'd be curious what, your directors are looking for in an HR partner. I'm assuming you got some of their feedback, but that would be good to get feedback from the directors as well. What does that partnership look like? What are you looking for out of an HR person that would be added to the staff? Making sure everybody's on the same page.
I really like the direction of the discussion because I think full-time HR in-house can then focus on retention, getting new people in, taking care of the issues that come up day to day. But when the serious issues, that person's now removed. So they're not, the heavy or, they still have that, hopefully that openness that the employee can come and talk to them and get things solved at a local level. So.
Yeah, Chair, I just wanted to agree with Commissioner Regovich. It's to have somebody in-house that's understands the environment, understands the people-to-people relationships. It's proximity kind of matters. And I think I just want to agree with you a lot on that, that it seems, Grace, you're asking for us to give job description. I think that's a great request. I I personally came from an organization that wasn't too different size-wise than this. We had 38 non-police officer members, and we had 32 police officers, about 60 people. But we definitely, for the non-police, and both actually, but we needed an in-house HR person, and they were a generalist. They happened to work in that case for the finance director, but the finance director had pretty good acumen on HR too. So having that person every day that was in the office could understand the climate they're in, the environment. They're not paratrooping in on a crisis basis, but they had somebody, a lifeline on an attorney. I mean, this model feels right to have your HR generalist on your staff for the size of the organization and some of the complexities you deal with a lot of different constituents. So, I mean, I sense sometimes your staff's, we all are work overloaded, but you got a lot of work here, and just helping with the climate of the organization might be helpful for that generalist to be on
Think
site.
so.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to work on the description covertly because I don't want my guy to then apply for the job.
High privilege.
Grace, anything else?
I think that's it in terms of the items that we had on the agenda today to help you understand how our HR function is working and some of the issues that we would like to address.
Next, I'd like to have a motion for the executive committee to adjourn to our committee to adjourn to executive session pursuant to ORC 121.22 G1 to consider the compensation of executive director as well as performance.
So moved.
I'll second.
Second. Thank you. Can I have a roll call?
County Executive Ronayne,
Yes.
John Gall,
Yes.
Commissioner Regovich,
Yes.
Katie Taylor,
Yes.
Mayor Costelli,
Yes.
Kyle Dreyfus Wells.
Yes.
We will go to that, the board, the small conference room.
Is that where we're going?
Yeah.
We're headed?
Picking us out?
Or we could do it the
No, I'm
other
just
way.
asking,
We
I'm
could
just-
stay,
No,
and
no.
That's fine. Whatever works best. We're
Yeah.
good.
Good. We know your name.
reports. I don't think there's any reports. Old business, there's no old business. New business, I think we're good. I am ready to adjourn. Can I have a motion to adjourn? So moved. Is there a second? Second? All in favor, say aye. Opposed, meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you. So for, I think for our next agenda, we have a few minutes here.
Yeah.
I think OE